at 6:02. Something up there, but-
Yeah, well, you can, I think, whoever, Steve or update.
Sure. What do you want to know? What's changed since last time? Since last time? Just about everything. Really, I'd say every unit is running. They put in all the, it's not working yet. It's not what it needs. This type is not. The hot water heaters, S22, and the base boards and those that we added on. They're getting the balance is pretty close to being where it has to be. Every once in a while, there's a couple of rooms that seem to go off and on.
That's probably the biggest thing that
The balance,
started asking is the balance, is a big step.
yeah.
Getting everything just right, water and air.
Like one day we'll have like 90% of the rooms, then we'll have 95, then we'll go back to 90, then it's almost perfect for like 3 days. And then air temperatures change, and we just adjusted the air temperature for the boilers of, come on now, 55 degrees. And, you know, it's just a matter of getting everything right. And they're diligent about it. I'll tell you, Matt's here. He's here a lot.
Yeah.
So,
And as soon as the balancing's done, we'll generate a report. Then the commissioning agent can come in and do his functional checks and all the equipment.
this weekend, they put in dampers, right? They put dampers in every single unit, and that's made a difference to controlling the flow. So,
When Steve says like S22 is not done yet, that's due to deliver the end of this month.
Right.
And then get it in right away. Get working on the base support, work.
the baseboard came in last week, not right at the beginning of the week, so them to start it would really been.
Is S22 one of the rooftop rooms?
No, that's the one that goes outside the gym.
One of the added ones.
Yeah, yeah. But they were here, and I can tell you how many were here last week.
Yeah, they took advantage of the.
I think it's every day.
Brought a lot of guys in to knock off a lot of functional stuff. So forth, so.
Yeah, I'd say they got the insulation on most of the ductwork. I think all of it there. I haven't been up on the roof this week, so probably looked at tomorrow. Overall, I'd say they're closing in except for those few things that I just mentioned. Everything's working again, fresh air. Yes, everywhere. So I'd say just about complete with the exception of those few things I mentioned. Overall, it's nice that they're not here all the time. All right.
Bob, what are you projecting for finances or something else?
Yes.
We'll pass that for now. We've got everything. It's just, I thought that with everything on the agenda, that would come back to that, where it's just kind of, that's the main item. But we're still in, I can tell you that we're in good shape. We've been working with Downs, Tish and I have been working with Downs, and, you know, a little bit of, but then you have to have a little deeper discussion, and, you know, our focus, I was really focused on the cost estimates going into stage 3, which we're in fine shape with that. It looks like we're probably, based on the latest presentation or the latest document that I received from Downs, it looks like it's about, there's a delta of 2 million to the good. But as we're writing this, the cost of everything is going this way, and the caveat is that we're not going, the rubber's going to hit the road with the bid, right? When we hit the street with the bids, and we get the bids for the roofs, for the general construction work, and for the site work, then we'll know. And unfortunately, asphalt roofing, pavement, petroleum-based products are skyrocketing. So
That metal roof's looking pretty good.
I won the bet. It took 5 minutes, but I knew metal roof would come up tonight. But,
Well, I'm thinking long term because we put the metal roof up. We're not gonna be talking about roofs for a few
yeah, I know.
projects.
It's,
you know?
it is an alternate, yeah, you know what,
In
what
20
you're saying,
years,
though.
Bob, every 6 years, we're talking about some roof in this district that's not right.
Yeah, it may become more economically feasible based on petroleum products in the asphalt. But with all that said, you know, I think, you know, that we're in good shape, but I really think that we have to kind of wait and see what the bids are. I think that's a fair estimate to the folks who are, Steve, what you're seeing in other projects as far as.
Yeah, you know, it's just like you said, the trend is still upwards, of course. And, you know, things are taking much longer to get.
So then the next, you're up, James.
So the next one is approving requisitions. You have it printed, or if the committee got a chance to
I
review the
can-
requisitions.
So I sent those out last night.
Yeah, I looked at
And they're pretty, I think it's, you know, $53,000 magnitude. 50.
So there's three components of this month's invoice. Two of the commissioning agents, relatively small invoices. He's been doing three functional checklist setups and reviews and so forth in the course of the 10 meetings. And then the contractor ATC for the controls. So he's now at 93% of his original contract. It's where he is with his billing right now. No retention has been requested or released yet. Of course, next month you'll see the additional work on his rec. We'll start billing for that as well.
I had one more thing about the HVAC. Tomorrow I will be getting control over the system. Show me how to control, which is okay, it's not working.
So we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
it. Get a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Here. Change order, water heater boiler venting option. I read everything you guys sent. Who wants to?
I think we asked the mayor from BPS or anything here to address this.
Okay, so in general, what's being proposed, there's a couple of options, but I think the restricted option is to install a new flue or dedicated to the water heaters. Some background on that, the reason why it's kind of coming up in this fashion is the boiler room and the water heaters were originally designed with 2 oil-fired boilers and 2 oil-fired water heaters that all tied into the same fluid, which is the existing. That's the original design, and there's actually some existing connections that were there for the original water heaters. At some time since that original install, the oil-fired water heaters were removed and 2 storage tanks were installed that were tied into the existing boilers. This is not optimal, mainly because we've got an extremely large boiler that has to fire up during the summertime, during the non-heating months to service those tanks. So at the end of the design, there was some additional funds. And it was requested that we replace those existing tanks. At that time, we recommended to install oil-fired units so that we didn't have to run the boilers all summer. Everyone agreed, so that's what we did. And what we did is we basically copied or we mimicked the initial install by tying those water heaters into that original flue. There was an issue with that because when the boilers fired up, we were getting backdraft of smoke into the boiler. So what we came to find out after that in discussions with the contractor and the company that services the boilers is that they had that problem initially back 30 years ago when those initial water heaters were installed, but I don't think anybody that is here now was there when that happened, except for the company that services the boilers now. So that's how we found out that there was an existing issue, and by tying into that same flue that was there from the original design, we're ending up with the same issue. So we're rectifying that now, and we think that this is a superior solution to installing straight tanks off the boiler, just because it's very wasteful and detrimental to the lifespan of the boilers to run them during the summertime for such a small domestic water boiler. So once we found out about the issue with the existing chimney not being able to do both the boilers and the water heaters, we looked at a couple of different options. One option was to install induced draft fans on the existing chimney in order to create more negative pressure and to be able to force the products of combustion up through the existing chimney. That's option one. Option two is to install a dedicated chimney for the water heaters. And looking at the pricing for the dedicated chimney is quite a bit less. And aesthetics aside, engineering-wise, we think it's a better solution.
Will we still be using the boilers to heat the hot water during the winter months?
No,
So
they're
boilers,
completely disconnected from the domestic.
Those oil-fired boilers are really efficient at that. More efficient.
Right, they're firing at such a low level, but they're very inefficient. And like I said, they're short cycling. It really is not good for them in the long term in terms of longevity for the equipment.
There was a pretty significant cost difference between those two options. From what I saw, right? What, 30 grand for the new flue and 90-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, I
fan
know.
system.
yeah, force induction, not cheap.
Right.
The other part of that is that more expensive version is mechanical, so it can fail. And that's just,
Exhaust fan fails, you have to, there's nothing.
Oh,
right.
you're gonna have some fun with that big long metal pipe in the winter time, trust me. But you'll figure that out later. Because they don't get nice and warm and stay warm if they don't have a lot going through them all the time. And when they get cold, everything wants to sink down the pipe. So you can still have a little bit of backflow into your boiler room. But you should have some sort of a backflow preventer on that pipe going out.
Yeah, there are barometric dampers too to manage.
Those are already on.
Yeah.
Well, they're
those
off
help
now,
manage the
but
draft.
they're right there. They took them off to block it off, but they're there. We have the same, similar setup at Metcalf.
Until you get all that metal hot, it doesn't.
We'll find out what we need there.
And if it's lower quality, he said, it's gonna stay cold. most of the time.
Everyone pretty much okay with that option? There a motion to approve that change order?
So move. Option one. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries. Project milestone, phase 3 submittals.
Yeah, I don't know, Lou.
Sure. Regarding the three separate packages that we have, the roof, the site work, and the general contractor, where all of those packages are being reviewed by Brian. We expect to hear back from them. So, would you mind putting on the other drawing? We discussed with the committee the idea of pre-purchasing the greenhouse. To that end, I contacted the green manufacturer and asked them, one, to address the method of payment, at what time would they be willing to ship the greenhouse? And second, when, what the lead time was for the greenhouse. This was a couple of months ago. I tried again a month after, said it was working on it, but it's never responded. The concern that we had with that greenhouse was that in the past, they would not ship it unless it was fully paid for. And that usually is an issue with public work that we don't allow for payment until the material is on site. Okay, so we wanted to make sure. And then I think that he hasn't responded in the lead time because he doesn't want to tell us they're going to get this. And so we've had some very productive meetings with the faculty, including the greenhouse faculty. And we discussed considering switching to an American greenhouse. They recommended a Matterport greenhouse, which is similar in size. It's a little bit bigger. What we had was 52 by 32. What we are proposing is 30 by 60. And in doing the research, is the most popular greenhouse for academic uses in the United States. And the other big benefit is that it's exactly what they want. So, there's some ownership,
mainly
there's some benefits.
Did it express the desire to keep the old one? I don't want to pack it up and store it, I guess is the latest, but
So the latest plan that we show is the existing greenhouse is here. And what we're proposing is building the new greenhouse here, approximately 10 feet away. That's just excavation of footings and that. And this location also leaves intact the original, the last location of the parking, which didn't go into the woods. And so this seems to fit nicely. And
where's the old one? I didn't look quick enough.
right here.
Okay, and they're okay with that because they were concerned about not having it in the same footprint. At least that's what I heard them say.
They want to preserve the old base found. It's not really a foundation as much as it is they parked out 4 feet of earth. They've got it all set up so that it drains properly with dirt floors. They want dirt floor. And they don't want the structure taken down because if it comes down, they won't put it back up again. So what my understanding is that they're happy with the idea that we leave the old structure there in place. We take everything that's bad off of it. And then in time, they can have 2 greenhouses.
So we're not taking it down.
No.
Basically, they're leaving the hoops, is basically what it's gonna come down to.
Yeah, they don't leave the structure.
They take all the bad off, but they're gonna leave the hoops.
They'll leave the structure.
Heating system? Oh,
No, the heat doesn't, no.
okay, so
It's
you
not
don't
gonna-
have to, you don't have to be concerned with maintaining much.
No, all that stuff will be taken out, it's just the
Good.
hoops that are gonna be.
They're gonna disconnect the utilities from it too, because they're all shot.
They're all. So-
I think this is, I mean, this
Great
is
compromise.
ultimately the best compromise.
And they're happy.
Yeah, are they okay with it being on that side of the greenhouse?
Well, yes, this is where they build their garden area, so this is that existing fence that they built,
Yeah,
and so it would be better not to disturb.
no, but I mean, the one side versus the other, there was a sun issue. And, so, but have they seen this plan yet?
They haven't seen this actual plan, I did draw a sketch when I was with them, which they.
Okay, because I know that what they don't want is the old greenhouse inhibiting the sunlight to the new greenhouse, but regardless, if you put it on one side or the other, one of the greenhouses.
Yeah, and-
And this is
Oh.
that's 45, right? So,
Oh, it's oriented correctly. They spend a lot of time figuring out how to orient it.
but technically this would block the old greenhouse, right?
You know, what we
I think
What we could do is take this and shift it down a little bit more. and put it more. That will get you maybe 20 feet, yeah, maybe 20 feet.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there in case that becomes an issue. But, if you can move it a little further towards the parking, the road, that would probably solve the problem.
Okay, so once we make that shift, we'll go ahead and do all the schematic designs over again, and that's what we plan to submit as a design development package. The next one.
And this new American-made greenhouse, is this like a modular, like the other one was from the other country? Is this same type of state-of-the-art?
Yes, and many of them, they cite that they're as good as the Dutch, and so the manufacturer, I think it's equal. What's different is the size. It also needs to have 3 gable ends that would open up. This one doesn't.
They were concerned with that too, because they didn't want to. Okay,
This is the one acceptable.
That's the one they wanted, that's what they asked for. They specifically asked for this particular,
and it doesn't upset our plan at all.
no,
It might be a little bit more of a number.
Well, excellent, John.
USA made.
Do
Who
we
found
have
this?
a
Did you
price?
find it, Louis?
Excuse me?
Did you find this new one?
No, they recommended 2. Then we checked on the modules and what it involved. We checked on references and where it's been used. And so we settled on this one because it got really high marks.
Do we have a rough estimate of the cost?
No, so that's what we're gonna get into now. We're gonna do the schematic design, really over again, development to design development. It shouldn't be dramatically different. I think it's gonna be about the same, maybe a little bit less.
I think for our next meeting, it would be really helpful, at least for me, to see like because initially we had a budget document that we were kind of upkeeping for a while, but now we've got this new fan system and a couple of other changes. So I feel like an update on that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
So with your approval for this new location and greenhouse tonight, we can move forward to prepare those drawings, send them out to cost estimate, and then we'll be back to you.
Okay, but I mean, like the other things that have been changing along the way, there's been some, which I know are all within the range that we had, but it would be nice to know where we're falling
Absolutely.
in the ranges.
We'll have new estimates for the site work.
Thank you.
Do you want to formally approve this new location?
Sure. We can discuss it. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Is there anything else in stage 3?
As I mentioned, we've had some really productive meetings with the faculty. We met again with the auditorium people, involved with that. The science was an interesting meeting in that the original scope of work really focused work on 3 science labs. And we were greeted by 5 teachers for 5 subjects. And of course, they were all kind of requiring us what we were gonna do with that. We met with the superintendent after the meeting because there seems to be a way to be able to include work in all of the 5 labs by reducing the work in the animal laboratory.
Pardon me, the what laboratory?
The animal.
Animal.
Okay, what is that?
That's in the basement, furthest corner, outside wall.
What goes on in there?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't wanna know.
Raise rabbits, things like that.
Okay.
So the original scope of work had us replacing all of the student tables, lab tables in that room. Those are fairly new. I want to say just a few years old and in really good shape. So by not having to replace them, it lets us do some of the improvements to the other labs, which mainly is demolition of some of the science demonstration desks. What the new educational trends is to have really flexible space, to have, yes, some lab tables, but really flexible space. So that creates the flexible space. And then allow the introduction of technology by giving them more power. They're really lacking some dedicated power, so we're able to give them back. So we're hoping that overall, it's not an increase to the project and that everybody will be happy.
It is very limited. Minimal investment.
What's the bid packet item?
So it really is, I think it's just kind of on there as a reminder for the group, you know, we're in March. Lou's got some work that he has to do for the, what is it, the design, the DD,
Yes,
and then it goes to the 60%.
that's right.
And then we go to bid. And that time frame is,
So it's dependent on when we hear back from RIDE. Tonight is a big step for us to move forward, to be ready. We expect that we will be almost completed by the time RIDE gets back with their comments for SD. We think that we're gonna be close to 60% at that time. We're gonna submit for DD. We're gonna ask Downs to help us with RIDE to expedite that. In some districts, they turn them around as quick as 2 days. It's kind of like a check the box thing, and then be able to start the bid process.
What's the date for the milestone bid process? Because, you know, we're already in March.
Yeah, again, it depends on RIDE. We certainly want to go back to the original schedule, which I'm going to tell you.
Do we need to start rattling rides cage?
I think so, but what we want to do is by the first week of May, yeah.
you know, to bid. In award before the end of June. And start as soon as we can get people on site.
That'd be nice.
I would say we want to be ahead of that curve.
So it's a weird year in that school ends and there's a solid week before July 4th. So there's a work, so if everything's in play, they could mobilize and really start to work. That's not typically the case. Sometimes we're just so close to the end of the school year, if it goes long, that it spills right into July 4th, but we actually have a solid week where we could make headway.
I'm more concerned with something you mentioned earlier, in that the longer this conflict in Europe goes on and the more resources are going to be consumed and thrown at that, and pricing is going to get out of control and materials are going to become more in short supply. You know, the government hasn't even started ramping up the military in this country yet. It's coming. A lot of the work we do is in that regard, and we know it's coming because we're starting to see the bid packages right now. If that comes, everything about war is gonna take precedence over everything else. So unless you get some things in place really quick, and that's what I mean, it might be time to start rattling their cages up there and getting those clowns moving, because, you know, the clock doesn't mean anything for them on the wall. You know, but it's gonna hurt if you don't get moving.
Who do you expect? A lot of competition. Most schools try to do stuff in the summer, and I know of several districts moving forward with things, like going out to bid in May, wanting to start the 4th week of June. Are we gonna get a lot of responses, or are people gonna be already booked or busy?
There is some, from our end, most of the work that we have other than this is year-long projects. So they're really not summer bangers. Most of the big work that's happening throughout the state is big work. So it's not a standard.
Are those the numbers Andrew was looking at?
Yeah, so I don't want to be evasive, but you can see this gets pretty noisy. This is going back to the finances, and it was on a budget. It was on the agenda. I'll just return to it. Part of what you're seeing, remember when we had the one pager, which was the blue, and it showed all the documentation of the budget, the estimate, and then what the actual was. And you can see that on the one project that we're working on. It's in cell 29 at the bottom here for the HVAC. And just, we approved some things tonight, but right now, as we stand tonight, we're $888,000 to the good on that. So we have plenty of capacity to respond to some of the things we took action on tonight. So the committee should feel comfortable with that. Regarding the other projects, those are detailed here. You can see the metal roofs for Walloon and Metcalf are in there. Some of the alternates that would be on the Walloon playground, and then this is the general construction, excuse me, showing the auditorium and the alternate seating, alternate flooring at the high school, middle school.
That delta on those roofs is gonna be a lot less.
Yeah, and meaning what, Lee, that it'll be
Your
closer?
material costs on the asphalt probably doubled, if not tripled, so.
So that's part of the landscape that we're in right now, that we're looking at a cost, the stage 3, this is all done so far on the stage 3 estimates that we have to date. But based on some of the action we're taking today, and based on, with the with the parking lots, and with the science labs that Lou was talking about in the classrooms, there could be some changes in the estimates when we get to design and development, and then you throw in the escalation. But having said all that, if we back out the 888,000 that we know we pretty much have in hand because the HVAC project is so far along, that puts us roughly at just under 2 million for a positive delta for the remainder of the projects, which I think has us feeling pretty confident about some of the things we're addressing, regarding, the comment of, well, there may be things we'll be able to do with some of the classrooms that weren't in the original scope of work, particularly in the science labs. I just am, I'm pretty conservative in my approach to this stuff, and given the state of the world, it would be great if the delta remains 2.7, but I don't know.
The order of events, pardon me, is the roof before we get to the science labs? How is that? No?
That's gonna be same time, right?
It's the
Same
same
time?
stage.
I think
So we'll know then if we're overspending from the roof materials before we begin?
We'll know when we open the bids.
Yeah.
We want the real pictures.
And that was my caveat at the beginning, like, so we're making some modifications, we know that we're going to, you know, probably have some impact there, maybe there'll be gains on the type of greenhouse we get, but we're gonna, obviously, we've gotta go back and redo that, the parking lot schematic, so that's gonna be an expense, and we know that, but at the end of the day, I think the wild card is that escalation that none of us in this room control, the nature of the world. And which brought me to that caveat at the beginning. We'll really know when we open the bids. That's when we'll really know, you know, Mike, it's that, okay, like, we may be like, yes, you know, we were like super surprised, you know, when we got the bid of 4.2 million for the HVAC project. And so hopefully we can be that surprised. I mean.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get that one.
But at the same time, we've also budgeted for some escalation already. We've already budgeted for some escalation as well.
Okay. How much do we do that? How much do we budget for?
I want to say it was like 10%.
Yeah, it is. So we have this document that was given to us very early on, and this is the one that I feel would be helpful to get an update on. It has every project by school, the initial project cost, the soft cost, and the contingency, and then the total cost. And again, I just feel like we're looking at tons of different pieces of projects, and to just have a bigger picture idea of where things are at would be helpful. To kind of keep
That's
that up.
actually the same spreadsheet with more columns there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super
Yeah.
interesting.
And here's the number we have to be concerned with right here.
Right.
And that's where, you know,
Right, and Andrew, you know, that if you're anxious about that, you know, that's been like Tish and I working with Downs and Lou and his team, like, you know, you hate to drop a number because then that's the one people might latch on to. And, you know, right now, I feel pretty confident based on all the discussions we've had, but this is so noisy. I'm like, I don't want to roll this out, you know, because this is a meeting in itself, you know, just understanding this, but I felt, you know, that it was, you know, I should present it. I have it, and we can get everybody that. I think it really is, what it made me feel good was that I was concerned we were gonna go, you know, go in a direction where we're adding costs that we need to have good information. I believe this is very good information. The next batch of information, there would be a tweak to this, Lou, again, based on the D&D, right? But I really think, you know, after all the discussions we've had with the team from Downs, with Lou in his office, Tish, Steve, myself, it's when that bid hits. And that's why I want, you know, that's need to be the drive. We got to get to the street so we can see where we are. To your point, Mike, you know, like, so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to belabor this, but we're going to bid all three at the same time.
I think the roofs will be ready to be bid before anything else. We should take advantage of that and put those out.
Lou, ride aside, when would you be ready to bid?
I think I don't want to get the first week of May.
first week of what?
May.
So it's not really RIDE necessarily holding us up.
Yeah, and
My point.
Well, it's not, but you still have to go through the 3 submittals.
Oh, I know, I said RIDE aside, but I'm saying if RIDE wasn't a picture or they already stamped it all, like, how long would it take you to prepare what we need to go out to bid?
That's different, without having to go through, right? The middle of April.
Couple weeks soon.
It's not only the right submittal, it's them making us go to estimate at each time. The estimate takes 3 weeks to do. So that's what.
James and I are just calculating the size of the gun that we need for objects, that's all.
Yeah.
And I could give you the exact location.
The coordinates.
Let's not talk shooting in the school.
Lou, I was
I was
asking.
trying to be politically correct.
I was asking because I've been involved in other projects that have done like 2 or 3 rounds of bidding, like where they put a bid out and then they get all the bids in and they issue a revision that only changes, 10% of the stuff that was bid. You just get revised bids in. So I didn't know if it made sense to try and get it out early, and if RIDE makes a change a little bit, you just do that. But if it's only going to save 2 weeks.
2 weeks is 2 weeks.
Well, when Lewis makes the 60% CD submission, which is the final one, if you will, we'll get it out in the street at the same time. We're just not able to award until you get that final approval. And that rebidding you're talking about, I mean, this project's got a good problem. It's that, like Bob's pointing out that there's, let's call it reserve versus bids coming in and making sure you have enough funds to cover it versus no reserve, and when bids come in, figuring out what can you reduce in scope to value engineer, or you have to rebid something because you had to change the line. I don't think we're gonna go through that process at all. So it's a one-time bid, it's getting the numbers, make sure they plug in overall, and then pull the trigger and go.
Yeah, but the big thing is that every day that goes by, material isn't going down. It's going up.
Yeah, I think everybody understands that.
Well, I'm not so sure, but I'll give you an example. I did a job in December and I had to re-estimate the same job today because we need to do it again. And the cost from December to today increases 4%. It's a lot of money. And we apply 4% to $17.8 million. That's a lot of money.
I don't know, I don't see the sky falling yet.
No, we're seeing 10% across the board.
That's, year over year, that's true. But
I
I'm
think that-
talking 3 months ago.
Yeah, and we're never gonna see the low numbers. It happened statewide, where right at the beginning of COVID, the bids that we put out last spring, we put out a $9 million project. It was estimated a $9 million project. It came in at 7.2. So what we saw here at the rooftop units, the same thing has happened before. Thinking that we're gonna have no work and really go big. I don't think we're gonna experience that.
I think for the timing, it's gotta be so the bid hits, 2 weeks on the street, open the bid, scope review, and award. That's probably a 3-week process from putting the bid out. Bid goes out on day 1. 14 days later, the bid closes, we receive bids, scope review, committee approves.
I do like your idea of putting out the bid package when he submits the 60% vote, because that will cut some time down.
Just need to be ready to take that vote. And I think with the reserve, I like the word reserve, I've done enough of these, a few of these, and my fear is that, not my fear, but one of the things I would just put there is the last, you were kind of alluding to it, Mike, the last project out of the gate is the one that could suffer if the economics move against it. You know what I mean? And that's the way it goes. But I think with that amount of reserve, we should be in good shape. I mean, we've got 5 million of the project, we'll just round off 5 million of the project done. So we're talking, 12 million left to go. So, 10% on 12 million is 1.2 million. We're over that. So we have escalation built in already, and then we have reserve better than 10%. So I think we should be able to get what we need unless something really goes.
I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but I keep thinking what a great job you guys are doing. Just want to say that. I don't want to jinx anything, but I want to say that.
I
And then the airplane engine came through the roof and landed on us.
keep losing weight, that's doing a lot for the.
But if I lose too much, the others gain it.
Yeah, I gained 10. of
Gain
these.
the 10 that I lost.
Oh, that's good. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else we want to discuss?
Motion to adjourn.
Sure.
Wow, jeez.